Welcome to the Everyday Magic Podcast.
Yay, it's finally here. It's time.
So exciting. Season 1, episode 1. We're finally here. So much on the journey to create this and be here today and begin to share a little bit about our journey as best friends for 25 years.
It's amazing that we've been on the journey this long. And can you imagine ever that we would have been guided to come together to create this podcast?
Never.
Yeah.
Imagine 1999.
Meeting in a park in Toronto. I remember you rolling up on your rollerblades, looking so hot and being so confident. I was like, who is she? Now I call you my best friend. What a journey.
Such a journey.
Mm-hmm.
How does one even get to be best friends?
I don't know. I think you have to find your way to it. I mean, Mindy from the Mindy Show says best friend is not a person. It's a tier.
It is a tier.
Who makes that tier? Why am I in that tier for you?
I remember walking the streets of New York. I mean, we spent a lot of time in Toronto really getting to know each other, being in each other's worlds through this crazy time of life, and then going our separate ways. And I just have such a vivid memory of calling you heartbroken, walking the streets of New York, and you just being willing to be on the phone with me through it all.
That's what a best friend is. They'll stay on the phone with you for at least 2.5 hours for no reason at all, with nothing happening, nothing good, crying, miserable, heartbroken.
Truly, you've been there for the best and the worst. Mm-hmm. You were there for the high moments. You were my maid of honor in my wedding.
Mm-hmm. And that's when I believe we started to do our leaps of faith of a calling together, actually, if you ask me. Because before then, we would go to the parties together, be there on the phone with each other. But I'd been living in Hawaii for 2 years. I had no money as a student to leave the islands to go back to the mainland for any reason. I hadn't. And you called me up and said, I'm in Chicago. I want you to be my maid of honor. And I was like, how? And I didn't say that. I said, yes. I said, yes. And I just was going to figure it out. And a whole bunch of things ensued, including me going, well, how can I get to the mainland and not pay for it? I'll try to speak at a conference. And I found one conference, and it happened to be at Harvard. And I was like, that's close enough. If I can get into that conference, maybe they'll pay me to go to it. And then I can get over to her wedding and be her maid of honor. And it happened.
It's true.
Yeah.
And I was so wrapped up in my wedding planning. I was just like, great, you're going to go speak at Harvard and you're coming to my wedding.
And it was only like 5 or 7 years later when I was telling the story and you were listening to it, you were like, you did what? How did you make that happen? And I went on to get a global award for sustainability because I was the top speaker at that conference. They invited me back the next year to be the keynote. And then I got global recognition, all because I wanted to be your maid of honor.
Incredible.
And I actually tell that story because I say Aine's an expander. To know her and to be with her and to be friends with her means you're going to up level, not because she forces you or pushes you, but because she inspires you. She just makes it like, of course that's possible. Like she gives you an invitation and you know that it is a calling, not putting you down or telling you you're not doing something. It's more so this is what you can be. This is what I see in you. And it feels so natural to her that you start to feel so natural to you. So anyways, everything I've ever done with you has always been top shelf, biggest possibility, biggest potential. Let's live a big life.
And to reflect back to you, you always flow, right? It seems so seamless, though I know I've talked to you many times at airports where you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. And yet I've watched you navigate incredible changes in your life, being guided to 25 countries, leaving Hawaii, leaving your marriage. You've been thrown so many curveballs, and you really do always look for the magic. You really always do find your flow and find a way to finesse even the crunchiest moments.
And what I've loved about the differences in our lives is that on paper, you had a long-term marriage with 2 children and lived in one city for most of that time. I lived in multiple cities, never found that person, never had children, and was always being called to some new form of career that had never existed before, like being a sustainability professor or being an angel channel for executives. And yet you never, ever winced at what most people around me said, that's crazy, that's weird, I don't understand that. You just said, great, sounds right, perfect, that's so you, do it, you can do it, the money will come, follow that. I just always knew that no matter what I was doing, when I shared it from the heart, you would understand. And you did the same with me, even though I was having experiences you weren't having. Like I remember sitting on the beach in Hawaii and saying, "Can you really tell me about when you had your first daughter, like your first child?" And I remember you telling me the long version, like the hour and a half version, and I wanted it. And I was like, wow, what it must have been like to sit in that pool of water and have those hands holding you while life is going to come through you. And you brought me there, even though I never had that experience myself. And I feel like we did that for each other a lot. We were always sharing from the heart what my experience is, even though it wasn't a comparison. And so many women compare. And so many women feel intimidated or bad if they're not having the experience the other woman's having. We've never had that. Just mutual celebration.
Yep. And willingness to say yes.
Yes.
I think we've gone on some amazing adventures. When we first met, we would flow, right? We'd be like in the flow.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I have to just share. We had the thing called the rollover. Remember that? It's coming back to me. So we first bonded over having the worst dogs in the park.
True.
I remember you telling me my dog stole a baby bottle from a baby carriage.
True story. And ran around the park with it like he had found gold. And I was so embarrassed. I humbly walked over with my shame. I'm so sorry that my dog stole that from your baby's hand. I can't do anything about it because he's the worst behaved dog in the park.
Except for my dog. So I remember we had this, so we have our dogs in the morning and we lived on the opposite sides of the park and we'd come in our pajamas and have our dogs with us. And then someone would say, "Hey, why don't you just come with us for brunch?" And this is before we had cell phones where we could text each other. So if someone invited you in the moment, you went with them. That's the flow, because otherwise how are you going to meet up? And so we'd go for brunch in our pajamas. And then someone else would come along and they'd say, "Well, actually, there's this new place that just opened and they're inviting me over. Just come with us." And we'd keep doing the rollover, which is you roll over to the next invite and the next invite without ever going home. And then we'd be like dancing on a rooftop watching the sunset in our pajamas with our dogs outside still. And the rollover was the OG flow.
Yep. We did have great flow.
Yeah, we did. And what I also love about us is that we both know how to say no. I mean, a lot of women don't know how to say no, especially to each other. We never were pleasers or fond on each other, et cetera. Like, if we couldn't do it, we couldn't do it. If we didn't want to go, we didn't go. If we were in a disagreement with each other, like, that doesn't feel right. And it was never a problem or an argument or a putting down. It was just two truths on the table all the time. Lots of times they danced in a flow of yes. And sometimes they woke each other up in a very assertive no. And, I remember you being in a relationship and you saying, "You must be getting sick of hearing me, like just spending all your time with me as I cry." And I was like, "You can cry as much as you want. I want you to just keep going through this journey. It's a big one." And then there was a point months down the road, I said, "Okay, you got 3 months to wrap it up." I'm getting done now, so you're gonna have to. You can keep going if you want, but I gotta get off this train, and I'll do dinners with you, no traveling, and try to wrap it up before the holidays.
And I did.
And you did. You were like, I was like, I'm not going to judge it. I just can't. You can keep going on this. I just can't do it anymore.
You keep walking into the door that you think you want it to be 6 foot, but it's really a 5 foot door. I keep walking into it, but I can't watch you walk into it anymore.
And I don't judge you if you want to keep doing that. I'm just going to be in a different room. Come visit me when you're ready.
Which I think is the beauty of friendship, right? Is to go with the flow, say yes to the adventure, and also say, "I see you, you're about to hurt yourself again. Like, let me help you not do that."
Yes. And I think it's really unique with us because we both consult so deeply intellect and intuition. We're both very booky. We both have read every resource we have on the topics that interest us, like business and money and personal growth and family. And, you really did mothering with children. I did a lot of mothering being a professor. We have always really been on the academic journey of life, whether in school or not. And we also really have always had an altar, done yoga, done our meditations, checked in with our body, knowing, done the healing in our bodies so we could trust the signals from our bodies. I developed that into being a professional intuitive coach. So I took that really, really far. And I feel like you did that in your own way with breath work, with Reiki. So in very different ways, we came to professions where we really coach leaders from intuition and intellect, but we have that with each other in our friendship too. It just helps us so much.
Yeah, and it's interesting to really think about the chapters of our lives and the chapters of our friendships, and how, as I accelerated my healing and my journey of consciousness and understanding and intuition and really trusting and listening to those signals, our friendship also accelerated in an interesting way, right? Our chapters, we are really different, and our friendship has grown and evolved. We do different things, right, than we did. We're not running around on our rollerblades and
going to raves,
right?
Crying about boys. Well, sometimes
a little bit. Sometimes little.
We
of that
might never
still.
escape that. Then what's interesting is that 2 years ago, so I've been traveling and living in 25 countries. You've been in Chicago for well over a decade with your family that you created. And all of a sudden, life has it such that you move your whole family to California. And you're so excited. And I'm like, let's have a phone conversation on Wednesday at 8 p.m. I'm going to give you a call. And you say, great. At 8 p.m. on Wednesday, I don't call you. I knock on your door.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come to your door and you open your door and your kids are like, what is she doing here? I say, you're not going to believe this. I got guided to move right down the street from you in the next valley, basically, in California. And we hold hands and we scream and we jump up and down in circles. And your kids are like, what is happening? So we got guided in roundabout ways to move to the same place at the same time, again, 25 years later.
Mm-hmm. And that really was the birth of a new chapter for us.
Big new chapter for us. We could visit each other in person. It wasn't just phone calls or Zooms. It wasn't just when things were really great or really hard, or, you know, just those mundane spaces started to become like, let's go for brunch, let's hang out. And it was so fun. Then things started happening where our operating system started to become more and more similar. And for me, it was that I had never lived in mainland America.
Mm-hmm.
I'd gone from Canada to Hawaii to 25 global countries. And now I'm living in California. And you've been in America all this time. So you're showing me the ropes of malls and brands and Instagram and just what flow of life is here, what families do here, how people meet for brunch and all of these things. It was just, the whole America thing was so new for me. And then I know that I was also starting to share with you what I'd been learning in my life and around the world.
I remember really distinctly having brunch with you, and I was at a crossroads of figuring out, you know, I knew I was going to be divorcing, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to live and where and what I was going to do. We were going to co-parent. And you said, but I just moved into this gorgeous apartment. I'm on the penthouse. You should come and live in the same building. And I said, okay. And 2 weeks later, I had an apartment in the same building. And that really began, again, another chapter, the goddess palace.
Yes.
Right? The penthouse priestesses.
Yes. I just remember you saying, maybe there's a penthouse with my name on it. I'm like, how could there not be? It feels too good. This feels like when we lock into a feeling, a North Star, an intuitive North Star that's on our path.
Yeah.
When you would say, you're going to make it happen. You'll be at my wedding. It's like, logically and rationally, there's no possible way for this. And yet I know I'm going to be there. The way she said it and the way I felt when she said it, it's going to happen. And you did that. You were like, yeah, I'm gonna move into your building. And I'm like, we're both gonna have these penthouses in West Hollywood, looking at the Hollywood Hills in like close to 50s. And I was just like, this is a miracle new chapter that's like full circle. So amazing.
I think it's almost a year now. It's more than a year because it was September. It has been incredible. And I go back and forth. I spend 1 week with my kids and 1 week here. And truly just the integration of, you know, moving out of an 18-year relationship and marriage, being with my kids, and having this process with my best friend, integrating this new life, re-emerging as this new version of myself with you by my side has just been magic.
Pure deliciousness. And so that was already a miracle. If no more happened than that, it's one of my favorite phases of life. And I would tell people, my best friend that's been living in different places than me, we're in the same place, and it just happened synchronistically. We didn't plan it, but it's happening. So then, you know, we're now living life very intimately on a daily basis, pretty much. And you're seeing, you know, me in my professional life, that I'm having clients and that I have this business idea that's been circulating around, and you're noticing it, that I've been using these products and taking this nutrition in a certain way that supports my sensitive, intuitive nervous system. And you're asking me questions about it the same way I'm asking you questions about, like, you know, why are people wearing this color? Why do people wear this? You're like, oh, that's an in thing. It's a trend. And I'm like, trends? What do you mean trends? Like, we're like asking each other about our
Why is everyone wearing the brand name on their clothes?
I'm like, I went to a soccer game and everyone's wearing the name of not the soccer team, but the sponsor. And you're like, oh yeah, they go by brands here. I'm like, what? I'm like, I was sitting in the hot tub and these people were talking about celebrities like they're friends with them, like they know them. And you're like, oh yeah, that's what people do. I'm like, why? So I was just like that. And then you were like, when you close your eyes and tune in and say you're organizing the field for your day, what do you mean? And I'm like, oh, I feel into what's possible in my intuitive field and I lock into it and I figure out what I need to do to overcome the challenges that are going to happen later in the day. And you're like, can you teach me? And so we're like teaching each other our operating systems. And you're always very intuitive. And so when I'm, getting clients and you're saying to me, I know that you keep getting clients, but I keep hearing you talk about these products that all your clients are using that are so helpful. And I just keep feeling like you have a business there, that there's supposed to be a business there. But I really couldn't hear it. It was like a glimmer of an idea. And I was like, probably, maybe. And then all of a sudden it was very clear to me because the way that I had been doing clients was drying up. And I'm like, wait, something's like the pipeline is getting dry for some reason. And then you had me tune in. You said, do what you do, find out and ask your angels. And it was like, oh, I'm supposed to create this business. I'm actually supposed to make a business around this company and its products. And you had a long history in this exact field of wellness and nutrition. You had done that for years and introduced it to me, really. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I'd had years and years in sales and marketing, in beauty and wellness. And I remember us talking and I'd go, oh, well, this is how we time this. Or if you're going to do a shake, like this is the time for it to come out. And it was like, oh, I was able to kind of call on all those parts of my past that I think sometimes when we look so easy, when we look back, we understand how it was all connected. And it's really beautiful in the process that we're in right now in building this business and this company to have that sense of like, oh, it really makes sense now.
Why I did that.
Why I needed, as you sometimes say, like everything was preparing me for this moment to be ready, to be capable, to bring those gifts, to know that I have that to draw on.
So you were giving me guidance and advice like, oh, if you're going to, release a protein shake, it has to have this many servings because people take it every single day. But if it's going to be a sleep gummy, you can have less servings, or vice versa, actually. You were like, if you're going to have a sleep gummy, then you have to have it 30 servings because people take it every night. But if it's going to be a protein shake, it doesn't have to be. It can be 20 servings because they don't have it every day. Like you had all of this wisdom and these ideas about what timing of the year things should be released. And it all made so much sense. And so you were helping me as a friend get my head wrapped around the notion of bringing these products to market. And then at the same time, I talked to my grandpa who raised me every day. We talked on video for 10 years. And I was sharing with him that I was going to make this company and that I had a pitch deck that I had put together. And I showed him the pitch deck. And the very last words he said to me were, I have to let you go. You need to work on your business. And he died. And you were right by my side while that happened and held me when I got the news. And I said the last words I said to him were, it's time to make this company. And then you said, well, it's time to make this company. I'm going to be by your side for it. And I said, I need money to just put aside clients and everything. This, $25,000 would be great. And I went to sleep that night and I woke up in the middle of the night remembering one of my clients had paid me with Bitcoin, but had held on to it and never given it to me. They just we got guided by their angels and my angels for them to hold on to it. And that one day I would call them and need that money. And it had been years. And I woke up and I messaged them in South Africa, told them this. And when I woke up in the morning, I had $25,000 in the bank and we got in the car to go to the gym and I showed you my bank account and I said, it's time to make this company. And it was shortly after that the angels came to us while we were sitting by the swimming pool and said, not only are you to make this company, you two are to partner 50-50. And now that's a big deal to be called to 50-50 partnership as someone's going through a divorce. And someone who said, I'll never be in a partnership again and also have been divorced. I will never partner with anyone. They came and said, you two are to partner in 50-50 power of the company and bring this information, this wisdom, all that you know and these products to the world.
Yeah. And just as you were sharing those parts of the story, I'm like, if that's not everyday magic, I don't know what is.
Right?
If that's not like, how do you go to bed at night saying, I need $25,000, remember, and then it's in your bank account, right? It's truly when you're on the right path, when you're following those nudges, those glimmers, that North Star, things really do unfold in a really beautiful, magical way.
Yeah. And I feel like there's no one else I could do this with, because a lot of people see the everyday magic I have. They see the $25,000 in the bank account. They see the couple hundred clients in 25 countries, and they're like, oh, it's easy for her. There's never a misstep. There's never a time where she misinterprets guidance, et cetera, right? And so when they try to get into the journey with me, and there actually is difficulties of understanding what was guided, and is that a test for me to make sure I stand strong, or am I actually supposed to follow it to the T, and like taking the guidance and making sure it feels right before I act on it. There's so many nuances to really getting guidance and working with it in a way that you stay very engaged and sovereign and at the steering wheel at the same time. You've been on that ride with me, figuring that out for 25 years. So when we would get guidance about the next step of the company, we could both stop together and tune into ourselves in our own very different ways and see if we both get a yes or a no, and why, and then compare those answers and get the nuanced answer so we could actually take the next step. And I just feel like there's no one else that can do that with me. It's not for the faint of heart.
That's why best friend is capitalized.
Just like divine feminine.
Divine feminine is capitalized.
My DFBF. Yeah. And we both are working on things in this journey. Like I went from doing most of my professional work in very small area of Hawaii, and you've been sort of more exposed to the LA level of quality and production, et cetera. So you've been showing me the ropes here. And then also, I have no perfectionism in me. So I'm also can kind of urge us along and be like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Let's just get it out.
Yeah.
So I think those two worlds come together, and we're always checking in with ourselves about, is this something I need to grow into, or is this something I have to stand firm with the ways that I know?
And we both stand by each other. So many of us, I know we together have both felt like there's a part of us that has the small, you're like, I could just go live on a lake.
Okay, we have to talk about our alter egos. If I'm not building Sofanya with you in Los Angeles, my alter ego is I'm sitting on a little lake in Canada reading and writing books for the rest of my life with dogs and chickens. And my small town Canadian heart comes in.
And mine is horse farm up in Santa Barbara. It's not quite a small town. Pretty beautiful, actually.
It's a luxury, just a luxury horse. There's a Porsche in the driveway.
There's a Porsche in the driveway. But I actually think it's also a part of us that could live a quiet, right? And I'll say like even play small, live a smaller life.
Yeah.
And a beautiful one.
Yeah.
And we both know we're called to step into leadership, to lead the way, to show other women what it's like to build this kind of friendship, to be in sacred intimacy in business, to be truly leading in the divine feminine. And that requires courage, and it really is so much better with a bestie along the way.
It makes it the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Because
we both really lead by love. We both, neither of us have ever gotten entangled on the things that are not important. We've both had friends and people in our worlds that are like, I got lost in corporate. I got lost in my marriage. I got lost in money and the things that don't matter. We never have. We've always been connected to our hearts, that love comes first, that truth comes first, that purpose and meaning and sacredness. Sacred has always been at the heart of all of our offerings. Your purpose, you identified as sacred joy. There's always been that depth to us and that focus. It's just always been ever changing of what we put it towards. And we both could put it towards very simple, quiet, sweet lives. And we both know that we're not meant to. And we wrestle with that a little bit, but we also together go, oh, well, we can do that purpose that makes me go bigger than I might even need to or want to. But if we do it together, we still keep that heart at the center of it. Because doing anything with your best friend is fun.
Until the small town boy turns up, and then we really have to.
And then you're like, I'll give us 3 months and wrap it up.
Look out for the small town boy charm.
I would say that
it's your kryptonite.
I do have a bit of an Achilles heel. What's yours?
Well, I'm working on changing it. What is mine? Mine is the artist. Not so much small town.
Definitely not small town. I would say someone that feels expansive to you. Like if they're an expander to you, because you're an expander, So if someone brings expansion to you, they're really into something, that their artistic expression or the business that they're doing, you can get really enthralled with their genius. I think we both have this. I can get enthralled with their values, and you can get involved with their genius, but we kind of forget, like, how are they treating us? And we both know this is because we got very programmed to be sort of the caretaker and to be the one that's more sourced emotionally and spiritually, and to be very self-sufficient. Like, we both have such a spiritual practice of yoga and meditation that we can very much take care of ourselves. And so we want the guy that makes it fun and playful, and let's be honest, we like great sex.
And we're going to talk about those things. I think no one was more surprised than us to be guided to talk about sex, money, and intuition in a podcast.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, in a similar way where you said, like, I want to be at that wedding. I don't know how it's going to happen. We're like, we're going to start a podcast. We're guided to talk about these typically taboo things. And yet, if not us, who?
Right. I mean,
not now, when?
We love these conversations. I remember sitting with our friend at the swimming pool the other day, and he said to us, a relationship's just like a thermometer to know how far you are in your personal growth. And we just both stopped and looked at him, and we were like, that is not what a relationship is for. And he said, what is a relationship for? And we both looked at each other. We're like, sex. And we're like, relationship, you can do everything else with anyone else. You're in a relationship, so you have great sex. And he's like, how do you have great sex in a relationship? And we're like, I was like, I wouldn't even be in a relationship if you're not having great sex. You had a different opinion.
Right. Well, old me and new me have a different barometer for that.
Yes. And so we both very much, love sex. And I know that when you were in a different period of life, I would say for me, I need to have 5 hours of sex. And you were like, what? And I was like, twice a week, 5 hours is, it's pretty, that's nourishing. That's the full nourishment. My cup is overflowing. If it's not that much, I notice that my cup's not overflowing. It's all I know. And you were like, how do you even do that? And now I'm like, 5 hours. And you're like, as much as possible. Yep. Yes, I think it is worth talking about.
Yeah.
Because I think you've gone from the journey of that not being part of your world or a possibility or interesting, and now it's your norm and your interest, and it's mine too. And we haven't found that forever person with each, like, neither of us have found that person that is our partner, but we both desire that. So we're on the journey of figuring that out at midlife as well. We both have had very broad, different experiences, deep with one person, me with many people, all the different possibilities. We've covered a lot of it. So I think that's important to talk about what is, possible.
Yeah.
Different ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
And the money part too.
Yeah. And how, again, so many stories around money, right? We both lived periods where we had none.
Yes.
Had periods where we have lots.
Oh,
we've built wealth. We've grappled with all the old money stories that come up, the ways that we should be or it's supposed to be, what's okay to talk about, what's not.
Yep.
And learning, about the divine feminine and the receptivity, the ability to receive and to step into what I call like our queen codes, right? Of really owning, maybe it's part of being in this time of life of we've graduated into real wisdom around. The other day I was, as we do, even with queen codes, even with abundance codes, have moments of like, oh, this is happening or that's happening. And I just dropped into me. I thought, money is a renewable resource. Time isn't. And I just know that at this point in my life, I have that wisdom running through me. Right. Whereas in my 20s, I didn't.
Right. We were questioning things a lot in our 20s. And I notice now that I'm 51, and nearing the end of your 40s, we are sharing a lot of the nuggets of the wisdom we got in answer to those questions with less questions and more. This is the code. This is what, remember this. I mean, we'll remind each other, remember, we learned a long time ago that as long as you invest, that money will come back to you. You're not overspending. You're not being frivolous. What you did is an investment. And we've learned, before it was a hypothesis, but now we actually have the proof that actually does come back multifold when you put it in the direction of the path that you're supposed to go on. So now I find us more reminding each other of what we learned side by side, more so than asking the ethers, like, what if we do this? I guess we'll find out. But decades later, we have some answers. So I think that's incredible. And we're applying it to a company.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what we invest in, who we invest in, how do we answer the callings of very specific things? Like, how do we do this podcast? And I love when we were getting guided to start to film. We closed our eyes and saw us in front of cameras and being filmed a lot. And so you said something like it would be really great if it could be close by and it could be somewhere we walked and we were walking back from the gym.
Actually, and I want to just say, I had a moment where I was like, it'd be so nice if there was like a studio where we could just walk in, turn on the lights, turn on the cameras, and start filming. And then we said that as we were walking up the street.
And I looked and I said, yeah, it would be great if it was walking distance on the street. I was looking around for an empty storefront. We walked into the front door and I said, wait a minute, what if there's another apartment in this building? And we saw our dear friend Sam, who's the manager. And I said, Sam, are there any apartments that we could use for a podcast studio, a video studio, recording studio? He said, yes. And he grabbed the key and we walked up from the walk into the studio we're now sitting in.
Also a penthouse, may I point out.
Penthouse priestesses, we've earned it.
And now we have the studio. Here we are recording the first episode.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The magic continues.
It does. And when I'm at conferences or things and I run into old friends and they're like, what's happening? And I said, well, my best friend and I are living in the same building facing the Hollywood Hills, beautiful penthouses with 12-foot ceilings. And they know the thin years when I sacrificed everything to, bootstrap businesses and change careers and to know that I've come to a place where we can invest in ourselves in this way to bring what we've learned to the world and these products to those that need it. And I say we're working on our purpose together and we have, penthouses in the same building plus a sanctuary studio where we film our podcast. Literally every single time, what do they say? You're living the dream.
Living the dream.
You're living the dream. And I always go, you know what? We really are. It's not a dream I could have come up with, but it is, well, as my memoir is titled, Beyond What I Know. It's fulfilling in ways I couldn't have imagined. It's better than anything I could have come up with. Wouldn't want to do it with anyone else.
Me too. Besties.
DFBFs, Divine Feminine Best Friends.
Capitalized.
You heard it first.
Yep. Love it. So we've talked about sex and money, all the good things. Let's talk about intuition.
So this is huge for me, as you know. I mean, when we first met, I was a pragmatic mechanical engineer working at a big tech company. I was very agnostic, didn't grow up with religion, didn't even think about the notion of intuition. And let's be honest, this was before the internet. Like, we weren't getting bombarded by this type of thinking or thoughts. I had pretty much a breakdown at work when I realized how much we were exploiting people on the planet through our manufacturing companies that were being set up in other parts of the world. And I had a breakdown and crying in my bed and curled up in a ball, just being like, please help me, please help me, please give me a sign of something to do. And I didn't even know what that meant. I had no idea. But the next day, while I was at a restaurant with a friend, our dear mutual friend, I said to her, she's like, you should quit. And I said, no one quits this job, especially as a woman at my age that got this far. And as I said it, the door of the restaurant in Toronto with 3 million people opened and in walked this one woman who was my age, a woman who had gotten as far as I'd gotten at the same company and had quit a month previous to teach physics to kids. And I told her that, and I said, I do feel like this is a sign to quit. There was more signs that happened that day. And I said, from probability in math, that happening one time, that kind of thing, but happening 3 times in one day is so improbable that I decided to follow it as if it was truth, as an experiment, just to see what would happen. Like, someone's going, I think this, the world, everyone says the world is flat, but I see the horizon and I want to sail over it. And I was like, I'm going to sail over it and see if it's round. I'm going to quit my job and see what happens next. And that's where my intuition started, which, as you know, led me to just get daily signs. Then I started having dreams that came true. Then I started to see spirit guides and angels that gave me very specific information that guided me to move countries to Hawaii and to lead a sustainability movement for 10 years. And I got information from them almost every single day that was very detailed, like wear something nice today because you're going to be pulled into a meeting that's important, and then that would happen. So you were kind of watching me from a distance as I was opening this, and I'm telling you these crazy stories, more like a scientist that sailed over the edge.
Right. And I think what's fascinating about your story is that you were having this opening and this exploration while you were very rooted in the science world. You were getting your PhD, you were a professor, and yet it was happening simultaneously.
It was happening because of the guidance. Like, I don't even know that I could have pulled off all the special, tricky, amazing moves that propelled me down that path of truly creating a sustainability movement in a state and getting it globally recognized. Like, I don't know what I would have done without guidance. And I know that you always greatly respected it and were interested and wanted to hear about it, where I had other people, it was just nothing we talked about or could talk about. Why were you always interested?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think it's part of just who you are.
Because you loved me.
Because I love you.
I mean, I actually think that might be the answer.
Yeah, like,
it's why I wanted to know about your birth too. Like, I don't know that I necessarily was asking every friend that had a baby to tell me about their birth, but I loved you. You had gone through an experience I wasn't going to go through, and I just wanted to know it because I wanted to know you. Yeah, fair. Yeah. So, but then you were on this path too, where you were exploring all these different modalities. And I think we were both propelled by healing. We both had traumas that had come up from childhood that we wanted to really look at, and we did it different ways. But I feel like when you go and crack open your trauma, you also crack open your intuition.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. And I always say your trauma is your doorway to purpose. Whatever you learn there and however you learn it usually is cornerstone to what you do next in your purpose.
And I think that you can't talk about intuition without talking about trusting yourself.
Right. And you have to heal your traumas to trust yourself.
Right. And especially if we're talking about, and I feel my intuition differently, but a lot of it is connected to my body.
Yes.
And
I have clairvoyance. I get messages that I see imagery that play out like a little movie with actual angel words in my mind. And I see schematics. I see structure.
So excited.
I know. And like, I love schematics. But you know me, I love a spreadsheet.
Yes.
Yeah. And the angels will be like, I'll see it like an outline, like a syllabus. I'll be like, today, I'll say this with a client in a session. Today, I see that there's 5 sections we're going to go through. The first pillar is this, and it has 3 points. Like, I'm just reading a syllabus for the session. Right? Yeah. And I know you're more in your body. Yes. Right.
And I've done containers with you. I've experienced that. There's always 3. There's 3 things we're going to talk about, and they each have 3 things.
And it's very structured. Not everyone, actually, but yours, that's true. And then we follow it. And it all flows in, and people are like, how did you do that? I'm like, the angels are just telling me, like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. And I find mine differently.
Yes.
I find my intuition, and I think we all do. And you always say there are 8 billion doors
to the same room.
And each of us gets to find our individual way in. And we are told, or we live in a world of distraction and consuming and, not really trusting ourselves. And so that's been a practice for me and in healing and in trusting. I remember doing a human design session, and the woman said, you have a sacral knowing. And she was the first person who said, but if you have trauma, particularly sexual trauma, you might be disconnected from that knowing.
Right.
And so that was like, I just remember that unlock of being like, oh, right. And so being on a journey of healing and also learning to trust again and to do those experiments for myself of, I'm getting a yes on this and I'm going to try, I'm going to go with it. And if I'm redirected, right, it's like, it's not a black and white game. It's really about nuance and listening and taking a step forward and going to sail to the horizon, even though we don't know what's going to be there, but we're willing.
Brave experiments and intuition. It is so brave to quit a job because you had a synchronicity. And it's so brave for you to have a knowing to move your family from Chicago to California and know that you're supposed to do that. And I remember you crying on the phone going, this is my dream. It's like not their dream, but I feel like I'm supposed to do this. And you battling that inner knowing versus all the rational information around you that says, you're uprooting through other people, et cetera. And I just remember, I just feel like so many women have knowings, but don't have support to actually listen to them and to gain trust in them. Because the only way you can gain trust is to do the experiment of listening, following through, listening again, following through until you go, I know that body signal.
Yeah.
I know that way of knowing.
I literally just talked to a friend who's in her 30s. She said she's in a relationship. She was like, I just don't feel safe. But everything is like fine on the outside. And I said to her, like, the more you learn to just trust that without feeling the need to justify it, we feel like we have to say, why or whatever. I said, the more you learn to honor that and trust that, the more magic you're going to find, the more your life is going to unfold in ways you can't imagine yet. But that's real.
It's
and
so
we're
real.
taught that it's not real.
Totally. Yep. Everyone wins when we don't listen to ourselves except for us.
Right.
And you have always been the voice that said, listen to you. I've always been the voice that said, listen to you. You've said to me, this might seem really irrational, but I feel I'm supposed to. And I say, yes, Leap, I'll be there. Call me when you get there. Let's buy a good outfit.
Put some heels in the trunk and a bathing suit just in case.
You never know what's going to happen.
That's right.
I'll meet you there.
Could turn into the rollover.
For years to come, apparently.
Yes. And it will. And it will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I really think that intuition for all of us is so important. And unpacking like why we don't listen, how we listen, what happens. And it not being something that's woo, but it's really something that's available to all of us.
We are not the only animal without instinct. We just have minds that have, been grown to override that instinct rather than work with it. And I feel like we weave the best of both worlds. And now we're applying it not only to a deep and dear friendship and traveling the world and supporting each other and our lives, but to a company. That with every single choice, we close our eyes, feel into our body, get visual downloads. We asked, when are we supposed to launch this podcast? And we got Galentine's Day, February 13th, which is at the time was only a couple months away, and there's lots to do there. And we closed our eyes and felt in, and it felt crunchy and kind of tense and hard, and it was going to ask a lot of us to get it together. And when we've tuned into saying not do it, we felt a flatness, a deadness, a collapse, which is a no for us. And when I felt into why we would do it, I saw that the timing would be right for this, that yes, it wasn't meant to be easy. We were going to have to overcome things in ourselves to get ready for it. And that overcoming was part of the process. And if we did keep that date, it would reach the people that it's meant to reach. And if we didn't, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
And so we went for it based on intuition, not the easy way.
Right.
Yeah.
I just, as you were talking, I was remembering the moment sitting underneath a tree here in West Hollywood. We found a tree and
it's either poolside in one of each other's couches
or under a tree.
Or crying in a parking lot.
True.
Lots of crying in parking
you're
lots.
not even in an LA resident if you haven't cried at a parking lot. But I remember sitting and we had been navigating the different ways that the company, starting a company with a best friend, being guided to be 50-50 partners, both of us having lived, been married, been divorced, had partners, had partnerships, things gone wrong.
We went in 50-50 before and it didn't go very well.
And we both sat under that tree and felt into, do we let this fall away?
Do we say no to this? Is this just like an impulsive idea that two besties could do this and it's just going to be a nightmare and we're going to tear ourselves and each other apart?
Yeah. Or do we
answer the calling as if it's real and sail over the edge and believe
business married,
get business married, get a prenup together.
And I remember having the feeling of like, if I don't do this, it feels small. It feels like a collapse. And if we step into this, and yes, there are attorneys and there are what ifs and there's a business prenup and there's real factual logistic 3D things to work through, but the feeling of it was expansive.
Absolutely. We chose the expansive feeling that we had come to recognize as being a yes.
Yeah.
Without having a lot of rational.
Got business married under a tree in West Hollywood.
The most romantic day of my life.
Right next to the pickleball, which we still haven't gone to play yet, but we are going to.
When it's time to actually have some freed up energy to date, pickleball.
Pickleball. We've been led to believe there are plenty of eligible bachelors playing pickleball.
That is a horizon I'm ready to sail over when we're done this podcast.
I'll be right there by your side.
I'm not doing it without you.
Very true. Yeah. yeah, I think that it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep.
Sex, money, and intuition.
It's all going to be a lot of fun. And it's asking everything of us. And we have learned to use intuition in ways we've never used before. We're both bending to each other's orbits of how a lot of things work. We're getting more polished, less polished, more perfect, less perfect.
And we always commit to having fun.
We have said that if this isn't fun, we're not doing it. And the best thing I love is that when it gets hard, we know exactly how to show up, which is with a smile on our face and curious. We never blame or shame ourselves or each other. We face the problem shoulder to shoulder and dive in and be like, where is this taking us? What if this is happening for us and not to us?
And we are both willing to sit with the discomforts that come up. Like, whoa, this is bringing up something in me. It's mine to work through, but I want you to know it's there.
Yep.
You know, that's the curiosity piece. That's the like, it's there's something here for me to mine. It's bringing up something in me.
Yeah.
I get curious about what's coming up. And I know you're there without your own, right? We don't kind of go into that dance that people go into of like, something came up and then it triggers you. Like we both really have the sovereignty in our intimacy, in this friendship. And as we build this company and begin a podcast journey, there's so much space for sovereignty and intimacy at the same time. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. I really hope and I feel that we're going to share in episodes to come the deeper journey of the specificities of this, of all this learning, because there'll be things that we see exactly opposite. And I'll be like, that doesn't matter. And you're like, that entirely matters. And I literally close my eyes and go and try on each one, try on what I was seeing and try on what you're seeing. And I'm like, and 90% of the time, I'm like, you're right. You're actually right. Because you're meant to take this to a more refined place than I've ever been. And so, but you're willing to do that too. And there's times when you're like, oh, it doesn't feel right. I don't want to. Let me tune it in. You're like, actually, it's my stuff. It's my, you know, this old thing that happened to me or that part of me that wants to stay small. I got to step up to it. You're right. And you're right and I'm wrong is never a power over. It's always a power with. It's like, thank you for giving me the invitation to something outside of what I would have done. It's actually where I'm supposed to go. I think it's beautiful. I look forward to sharing that. So I'm really excited that the next episode is going to bring everyone up to speed on what we've learned in this year of saying yes to the calling to co-create this company, Sofanya, built on the pillars that we decided, like intellect and intuition, really consulting science and spirituality, and showing up as best friends that have created sort of a business prenup so we can be business married together.
And a company that centers the divine feminine and what that means. I think there's probably people who've never heard of it before, and then there's people who have an idea, but I think we're really creating a new paradigm of what it looks like to really take everything you've learned through your PhD, through your life, everything I've learned in my life and in my non-academic but very different way of gathering insight and information, and bring those two worlds together, centering this divine feminine that is going to change the way that business can be done. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, I feel like in the next episode, we're going to get to talk about some very specific things we came up against and how we used intuition and our love for each other and centering the divine feminine and solving them. So I'm really looking forward to diving in because we've learned a lot in a year. And if we can use the next episode to get everyone up to speed, then the episodes after can be sharing real time while we're navigating and learning the learning edge of our awesome new wave.
Thanks for being on the journey. Thanks for being on the journey with us. If you've made it this far in the podcast, you are one of us. And we know that the journey isn't always easy, but it can be beautiful when we have each other. We know that as best friends. We know that as we have community, right? We don't have to do this alone. And we also know that when you look for it, there is magic. And we invite you to look for the everyday magic in your own life.
And we'd love you to stay connected with us. So if you go to sophanyabeauty.com, so it's Sofanya, our two names put together,
we'll tell you the story of Sofanya next time.
Not spelled the way our name is at all, but sophanyabeauty.com. You can get on our newsletter, and we really want to continue the conversation. We, like any two friends, you talk about things and you go off stuff and you have afterthoughts and you have more topics you want to talk about, we're going to keep that conversation going. And we're going to also share invitations to new offerings we have when the products are coming out, for example. We'll talk more about that in other episodes. But we really invite you to be in part of the community as well through SophanyaBeauty.com.
Beautiful. And it'll be in the show notes. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes.
Thanks for joining us. We look forward to next time.
See you next time.